What's up everybody, Jennifer here. I hope you're doing well, and in today's video I'm going to continue reading Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance by Valerie Condos Field, and in today's video I'm going to be reading chapters 3 and 4. Hope you enjoy them. Chapter 3, Enter Miss Val. What's in a name? William Shakespeare. I joined UCLA in the fall of 1982 as an assistant coach and choreographer for the Bruins women's gymnastics team. After growing up and spending the majority of my life in a ballet studio, I relished and embraced being in the UCLA gym filled with the haze of chalk dust. They also asked me to coach balance beam. I had no idea what the heck I was doing, so consequently I really didn't do much except marvel at what the human body could do. The gymnasts flipped and twisted and contorted their bodies with perfection. What shocked me the most was that their skill was an abbreviation. The gymnasts did this every single day, multiple times per day. It was a thrill to be involved with the amazing UCLA women's program, which trained alongside the illustrious men's gymnastics team. I remember teaching our athletes a ballet class early on when Lisa Taylor, one of the gymnasts, asked me in a smart alecky tone, "Are we supposed to call you Miss Val? In the dance world, you call your teacher Miss instead of Coach." I thought it was a fine idea. I replied, "Yeah, sure, call me Miss Val." And since that day, most people in the gymnastics world and others who know me professionally call me Miss Val. I hope they do it because it has a nice ring to it. The cool kids shorten it to Miss V or VKF. I'm fine with any of those as long as no one calls me ma'am. From 1982 to 1996, the women's team trained with the men's team. In the early 80s, the men's team included some of the best gymnasts in the world. Peter Vidmar, Tim Daggett, and Mitch Gaylord, three of the greatest of all time, would become part of the 1984 men's gymnastics team, the only gold medal winning team in U.S. men's gymnastics history. I got to watch these athletes train every day. In fact, Peter humbly asked me if I would clean up his floor routine and give him more polish and style. And as an added bonus, Mitch and I had a history class together. I felt like the coolest girl on campus because I got to ride on the back of Mitch's motorcycle every Tuesday and Thursday from class to the gym. I settled in quickly to my classes and to being the balance beam coach and floor exercise choreographer for the women's team. In 1987, I graduated with a degree in history and was looking to become a journalist while still choreographing for UCLA and other university and club gymnastics programs. 3 years later, I did not think much of being called into a meeting with our associate athletic director, Dr. Judith Holland. Imagine my surprise when she offered me the job of head coach of the team. The UCLA women's gymnastics team was a powerhouse program. It often had the most talented gymnasts in the nation, but the team had never won an NCAA championship. We were runners-up twice in the 1980s. In 1989, we finished second to Georgia by .05 points, counting 2 falls. To win a championship, everything has to come together. Great coaching, healthy athletes, good team chemistry, luck, and more. A full season after the second place finish, UCLA and Dr. Holland decided to try something different, and boy did they. They offered the premier head coach position to a dancer choreographer who has never done gymnastics. Over the past 2 decades, Dr. Holland had recounted the reason behind her decision many times. I was determined to hire women as head coaches whenever the opportunity was available. When the head gymnastics coach was not performing up to expectations, I decided not to renew his contract and to look for a woman head coach. Not one woman applied for the position. I was aware of Valerie's ability with people and liked her relationship with the athletes. She was firm with them, but in a strong and healthy communicative manner. I was greatly impressed by this and decided she was the right person. Needless to say, the gymnastics community nationwide was up in arms and let UCLA know that they thought the university had made a ludicrous hire. Dr. Holland had been prepared for some pushback, just not at the level that poured in. She received multiple letters, phone calls, and in-person visits, all of which questioned and strongly opposed me being given the position. I had no idea of the volume of opposition coming in regarding my fitness for the head coaching job. If I had known, I would have said, yep, 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 and agreed with all the concerns. When I accepted the job, I told Dr. Holland I'd take it for 1 year to give UCLA time to find a qualified coach. In the meantime, I got busy studying successful coaches from many different sports. In my mind, a coach was tough-minded, tough-talking, unwavering, intimidating, and had a dictator-like swagger. Since I had grown up on the dance stage, acting out different characters, I figured I could act like a coach if I studied some of them well enough. So I assumed the posture of a relentless, intimidating coach and learned to say things like, go hard or go home, and winners make adjustments and losers make excuses. I thought these were brilliant, even though they didn't resonate with them. Go hard or go home wasn't something I had ever heard in a ballet studio, and there was no winners or losers on stage. To help facilitate my new position, I hired Scott Bull, an accomplished and experienced coach, as my co-head coach. We had previously worked together at UCLA when I was an assistant. The night before the national championships that first year, I felt like I needed to have all the answers. I had crafted my pregame speech to have real theatrical flair and pulled out my acting 101 abilities. I started my speech echoing the same old things they'd all heard before, wanting them to think they would know the next words out of my mouth. Then, with a carefully timed dramatic pause, I cut the speech and proudly proclaimed, "That's all nonsense. It's a new era for UCLA gymnastics now, and let's go win this thing." I was so concerned about performing my role well that I didn't consider consulting my co-head coach Scott, asking him how we wanted to adjust the team the night before the championship. The speech flopped, and so did we. With my newfound manufactured, quote-unquote, coach's attitude and an experienced support system around me, the team finished dead last that year at the NCAA championships, 8 places lower than the previous year. When we returned home from the meet, I walked into Dr. Holland's office and said, "Remember how I told you I was going to take this job for only 1 year? I want another year." A competitiveness I didn't even know I had in me kicked in. Dr. Holland sat there with a smug smile and nodded. She must have been thinking, Valerie will eventually grow into this job, hopefully sooner than later. I studied harder. I became more hard-nosed. I demanded more of our team, learned more cutting quips, implemented sarcasm as a real stinger, and did my best to be unrelenting, unwavering, and quote-unquote right at all times. Head coaches need to show strength by always being right? At the beginning of their competition season, we traveled to Oregon State for a meet. As a team, we were pretty good, but my leadership was horrible. My competitive juices were flowing in the locker room, and I was trying to wrap my head around the close loss we had just suffered when I heard the pop of gum behind me. All the girls knew we had a no-gum rule on the team. Without turning around to see who had popped their gum, I yelled in my new head coach vernacular, "Spit that gum out of your bleeping mouth." To be honest, I knew what I said was wrong, but I wasn't sure why. Didn't other great coaches use vulgarity all the time? It later dawned on me that it wasn't the vulgarity that was the worst offense, but the fact that I had placed the vulgarity on our athlete and not on the gum. That incident has always stuck with me, and later when I had the opportunity to see that athlete again, I apologized. After my second season as head coach, the results were crystal clear. We were horrible and getting worse. We failed to even make it to the national championships. That was it. I decided to resign. I remember not being upset by this, and clearly thinking I just wasn't cut out to be a coach, and I should vacate the position for someone to take over who was more qualified. Then I could go get a job doing something else in which I could truly be successful. I was actually quite excited to meet with Dr. Holland and say, "See, I told you I wasn't right for the job." I was walking through the UCLA Student Union on my way to Dr. Holland's office to resign when I spotted one of John Wooden's books called They Call Me Coach. I have to admit, I really didn't know much about the legendary coach at that point in time. I knew he had won a lot of championships, and there was his pyramid of success. A lot of people thought it was impressive, but that was about it. I honestly don't know why I ever thought to study Coach Wooden. Part of it might be because that he wasn't a colorful, exciting personality, and so I thought I wouldn't have anything to glean from him because my paradigm of great head coach had to be included being charismatic and captivating. Oh yes, I had a lot to learn. I picked up the book, and the first page I opened to was Coach Wooden's definition of success. Success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction and knowing you did your best to become the best you are capable of becoming. I thought, that's weird. I had been studying very successful coaches, and most of them talked about winning. Why didn't Coach Wooden talk about winning? He had won 10 NCAA basketball championships in 12 years. In 2009, Coach Wooden was named the greatest coach in American sports history by Sporting News, beating out the legendary Vince Lombardi. I read it again. Success is peace of mind. No, success is achieving a title, earning the level of income you want, winning and earning medals. It's something tangible. I read it again and again. Each time I read it, the word you kept getting bigger and bolder and brighter. I finally got it. I realized I had been trying to be someone else. And I also realized that whenever you try to be someone else, you will always be a second-rate them, and worse, you will never become a first-rate you. With one sentence, Coach Wooden humanized the process of sport for me and lifted the burden of outcome. I went back to my office, sat at my desk, and thought, what is it that I can bring to this job that is worthwhile, authentic, and inspiring? As a dancer, I knew about discipline, focus, and how to block out pain. Point shoes are many torture devices. I knew what it was like to grow up in a leotard and have body image issues. I knew what it was like to be judged by how I looked. Most of all, I knew how to prepare well enough to be calm and confident, vibrant and enthusiastic on stage. I never experienced stage fright or nervousness while waiting in the wings. And when I screwed up, which I did royally a handful of times, I knew I had to compose myself and finish. I realized that this is exactly what gymnasts need to learn. The biggest difference between dancers and gymnasts is that for gymnasts, the feeling of satisfaction often requires a win, a ring, or a medal. To make things more complicated, in gymnastics, scores are determined by other human beings, the judges. My definition of success as a dancer was being able to go on stage with confidence, knowing I was prepared. It was that simple. I decided that would be exactly my ultimate goal in training our gymnasts. At that moment, right when I was on my way to quit, I realized I could actually do this job, and do it well. In fact, the art of preparing young women to be calm and confident before they compete is something I knew I could do well as any other gymnastics coach. I just needed to block out all of the coaching noise. I needed to start listening to my own voice and make the best decisions I could, one day at a time, one step at a time, and one choice at a time. I kicked my feet up on my desk and smiled because I knew I could do this job. Chapter 4, Choosing to Motivate. You have not taught until they have learned. John Wooden. A coach is a person who motivates change. Coaching is a massive responsibility. Parents, teachers, coaches, anyone who has a strong influence over the development of others, especially children, have the most important job in the world. Overall, it's our job to motivate change, mentally, emotionally, and physically. The only reason people need coaches is to help them accomplish things they can't do on their own. I believe we could all benefit from great coaching throughout our life. In business, we call it a mentor. On a couch or comfy chair, it's our therapist. And in the kitchen, it's a dietitian. A great coach is there to help us see things in a new light, to expose us to new techniques and ideas, to expose us to new language that helps us see a situation differently, to show us possibilities that can become realities if we choose to make the change. Sports, one of the greatest venues to learn life lessons. The arts are wonderful, but they don't develop team building or encourage the competitiveness that I believe we all innately have. When I began coaching, I quickly learned that I have a very competitive spirit. And like most of us, I hate to lose. I also intrinsically knew that there had to be something more to sports than just being able to say, ha ha, we beat you, regardless of the fact that winning is really fun. To feel good about being a coach, I knew there had to be more to this leadership position than bragging rights and acquiring trophies. Sport encompasses strengthening the mind, body, and spirit. Sport develops the emotional stamina, our character. Team sports connect us to one another, resulting in the vital realization that rewards of accomplishing something together are far greater than anything we accomplish on our own. From the moment I read and absorbed Coach Wooden's definition of success, my approach to coaching has always been to coach the person before the athlete. There are a ton of very successful coaches out there who feel the same way I do and who view the job as developing champions on and off the court. Not all coaches take this approach, though. I've researched different coaching styles and philosophies and studied coaches who have had the most success. I've been able to define 4 predominant coaching styles, which can translate to the business world as well. Like with any personality assessment, every coach isn't necessarily going to fit into just one category. In fact, I would argue that most coaches are a blend of a few different styles. However, I've based my descriptions on coaches I personally know who are pure ambassadors for one particular style of coaching: the defeatist. These coaches are pessimists, cheerleaders, and uninspired. Any success they achieve is coincidental. They show up at the obligatory practice times and may put in a few required office hours before heading home to their real life. These coaches have no inspiration or motivation to craft a championship culture or program. They simply show up to get the paycheck. The defeatists will often use excuses as to why they don't do well. These coaches provide a total disservice to the athletes and their institutions. Quite often, a defeatist coach will offer quips like, "They don't pay me enough to want to put more into my job. Maybe if they gave me a bigger budget, we'd do better." Or, "We can't compete with the biggest schools with more money and more desirable locations. So what's the point of busting my butt to compete with them?" The most irksome excuse I've heard is from coaches from other universities who say they can't compete against UCLA in recruiting because we're a quote-unquote sexy school. What? This is such an insult to me, as I've always done the hard work in recruiting to make sure I leave no stone unturned. Every school has its pros and cons. It's my job as a head coach to get recruits to see the exciting opportunities in our program, on campus, and in our community. I believe that the true defeatist coaches would actually be much happier and more successful in another profession. I know of one such used-to-be coach who is now in the tech world and is thriving in his new career. He's a totally different person now that he's found something he loves. The narcissist. In a narcissist's mind, the team and the athletes exist merely as the pieces needed to facilitate a reason for the narcissist's reign. You might be able to recognize a narcissist by the fact they constantly refer to my team, my athletes, my program. While it's easy to get caught up in this verbiage, I've always been cognizant that I am a steward of UCLA. It's not my team, it's UCLA's team. Narcissist coaches don't see things from anyone's point of view except their own. I witnessed one of the most egregious examples of this while I was on a recruiting trip. I was in a hotel lobby getting breakfast, and in front of me was a group of junior high-aged boys in their soccer uniforms. They were obviously fueling up to play a game that day. Their coach came in, cut in front of all of us, waiting in line, looked at the boys, and flippantly said, "Good morning, ladies." That insensitive remark deflated the boys' energy and changed the demeanor of each and every one of them. They muttered a weak and obligatory good morning back to their coach. I was furious. Not only was that remark simply thoughtless and cruel, but what coach could actually thinks calling a group of young boys, or for that matter, girls, for that matter, ladies, is going to fire them up to go compete? It took everything I had not to tell off the coach and then give the boys a pep talk. You may be wondering if I call our athletes ladies. I don't. They're Bruins. A coach being kind and courteous to their athletes is often giving a bad rap as being soft and not exhibiting behavior worthy of a strong leader. Sadly, this bleeds into how coaches treat their athletes. I'm firmly of the belief that some of the strongest characteristics we can model for our malleable athletes are kindness, respect, humility, and grace. They know we're tough. They know we can demand them to work hard. They know we can be relentless. However, when we show them respect, it carries far more weight than when we just bark orders at them. That respect is most evident when an athlete doesn't perform well. Too often in our sport, we see a coach walk away when an athlete makes a mistake, sometimes even before the routine is completed. What message does that say to the athlete? You're not worthy of my attention unless you compete well. This is the action of a narcissist. The focus is on them and not on the athlete. The strategist. A pure strategist focuses on the fundamentals of the game and not on the athletes. They absolutely love the sport, and they put in the majority of their effort into formulating a winning plan. Then they tend to work the plan from a clipboard, whiteboard, and film. All great coaches are strategists. They have to be able to craft an innovative plan. Marta Karolyi, the former U.S. national team women's gymnastics coordinator, is a brilliant strategist. She and her husband, Bella, developed a battleground to train athletes to be indestructible athletic robots with impenetrable shields that made them impervious to all pain, just as they had done in Romania before coming to the States. Marta and Bella have also been accused of excessive verbal and emotional abuse of the athletes they trained. They have been accused of forcing injured athletes, some hurt quite severely, to keep training. Marta will argue that she was not abusive at all, insisting instead that everything she did only made the athletes stronger. The athletes will admit to being part of the most indestructible gymnastics army in the world, but that came at an extremely high price, which included broken bodies and emotional scars. Betty Okino was a 1992 Olympic bronze medalist who trained with Bella and Marta before Marta became the national team coordinator. She doesn't dispute that the Karolyis developed athletic champions, but she also contends that in the process, the athletes were stripped of any sense of self and self-worth. The young women who trained with the Karolyis did not develop the necessary tools to deal with life after they left the dictator regime, and the limelight and all the attention disappeared. Betty echoed what a lot of elite athletes I have coached have described. When you are no longer one of the top athletes, when you are no longer needed, you are discarded. While there was a coldness to the training environment at the Karolyi Ranch, there is a nothingness after your time there is done, Betty said. No one cares about you in the after. It's in the after that you realize they never cared about you as a person, only for the medals you could win. That is a pain that is so deep, you don't even know how to find words to describe it. No one from USAG sees the emptiness that is felt in the after, except the athletes and then later the college coaches. To be truly great strategists, coaches must be able to craft an innovative winning plan, and there are as many ways to do that as they are coaches. Coach Al Scatz was the UCLA men's volleyball coach for 48 years, during which time the team won 19 championships. One of his strategies was that he only paid attention to the top 14 to 16 athletes on the team. The other 10 were literally behind the curtain. There was a curtain in the practice gym that divided the space. If you were in the top 16, you practiced on one side of the curtain with Coach Scatz. If you weren't in the top 16, you practiced on the other side of the curtain in a smaller space with an assistant coach or team manager until you performed your way into the top 16. UCLA current head women's volleyball coach Mike Seeley was one of Coach Scatz's athletes. He told me the simple reason Coach Scatz's system was so effective was because it literally was Darwinism, survival of the fittest. He went on to explain that one of the most important things about the system was just because an athlete might not get optimal coaching and playing time didn't diminish their ability to achieve greatness. There were 2 athletes on our team that never made it to the top 16 of the curtain, and yet because of their constant drive to want to get to the other side of the curtain, they went on to play in the Olympic Games. This system not only honed one's competitive fibers, it weeded out the lazy, the whiners, the weak. This system rewarded perseverance and grit. One never knew when one of the top 16 might be injured and you'd be called to the other side of the curtain. This is what you prepared for. You're one of one shot to show that you've prepared and are ready and will never go back behind that curtain. Think what you will of this method. It worked for Coach Scatz. He's the all-time winningest men's volleyball coach in NCAA history. Anson Dorrance, the legendary UNC women's soccer coach with 21 NCAA championships under his belt, is also someone I consider to be a great strategist. Anson perfected a training system called the Competitive Cauldron, which was the first developed by yet another strategist, legendary UNC basketball coach Dean Smith. With a competitive cauldron, everything an athlete does in training and in competition counts. As Coach Dorrance explains, every day in training, the team managers kept track of everything the athlete does. At the end of the training day, all of the athletes can see where they rank in comparison to their teammates. The purpose of the cauldron is to ignite a competitive fire among athletes. The cauldron stresses to the athletes the importance that every little thing matters. The cauldron inevitably invites each athlete to fight their way onto the top of the team stats, which creates an intense and healthy competitive background. Coach Dorrance took Dean Smith's idea of the competitive cauldron and tweaked it to best suit his team. The competitive cauldron is known to work so well that in the NFL in 2013, Coach Pete Carroll took the model and tweaked it for the Seattle Seahawks. The next year, the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. I think the competitive cauldron is a brilliant strategy because it teaches accountability, and athletes quickly learn that everything they do in sports and in life matters. We actually implement many competitive cauldrons almost every day of training. In order to get most of the athletes to participate, we always include a simple skill, something like a simple round-off, back handspring, layout backflip to a stuck landing, ending with a controlled salute. Each athlete gets a score for the first round, and then they line up from lowest to highest score. Then the fun begins. We move on to head-to-head battle. An athlete can choose to challenge another athlete for their spot by performing the skill again. If their second score is higher than the score of the athlete they challenge, the two switch places in line. I love how feisty the athletes get during this challenge. There is not a lot of head-to-head competition in gymnastics, so implementing challenges like this strengthens the athlete's competitive drive. At the same time, it shows them that it's good to challenge and best beat out a teammate because it all helps make the team stronger as a whole. A true strategist is brilliant and a consummate student of the game and sport. A true strategist embraces the facts, stats, and crafts a training plan that encourages each athlete to want to beat their fellow teammate, knowing it's only going to make the team better. A true strategist understands and is precise in implementing the biblical phrase, iron sharpens iron. The problem with only caring about the strategy of the win is that it takes the human element out of the equation. Coaching this way becomes a missed opportunity to reach athletes' unbreakable lives more and skills that would help them make strong individuals and strong leaders. Sports help produce superhuman humans who can help make the world a better place. Do we really think that a shiny gold object is going to impact a fellow mankind positively? Who cares how many medals Michael Phelps earns if he doesn't use his fame and influence for the greater good? That's the whole essence of sport, to develop leaders and life champions who transcend the game. The altruist. The altruist is selfless and devoted to others. Altruists are mentors who treat athletes as people who are interested in learning how to live better through sport. The altruist will take the higher road and lead at certain points throughout intuition, emotional quotient, and compassion. Altruists understand that everything they say or do will be taken and translated by their athletes in some fashion. Altruists will always first consider the needs of their athletes or coaches under their leadership before their own comfort and ego. The perfect coach would be a combination of a strong strategist, altruist, and yes, narcissist. I add the last one because as long as the coach has a strong acumen for the sport, a strategic plan for getting the athletes to reach competitive greatness and a comprehensive, healthy embodiment of what success and winning mean, the ego doesn't get in the way and can provide a healthy dose of confidence and swagger to the program. In retrospect, I believe our success at UCLA has come from the fact that I understand I'm not the perfect coach and therefore have taken great care to assemble a complete coaching staff, one that embodies all of the positive attributes of great coaches. I naturally gravitate toward the altruist, and yet with a lot of dialogue with our coaching staff, I've learned how to be a good strategist. Ultimately, how we coach is 100% our choice. Our coaching style is not solely based on our innate personalities. Our job is to be extremely mindful of what we say and do. Everything matters. Every good coach knows that the magic happens when the whole person is vibrant, when an athlete gets in the zone. If you only coach the fundamentals or execution of skills, that's all you'll get back. To be clear, you can develop athletic champions this way. You can win championships this way. The highest levels of competition across all sports are filled with these coach-athlete combos. To get the magic, however, you need to strengthen what's happening on the inside. For magic to happen, you need to trust. There needs to be trust between you and the athlete. An athlete needs to trust themselves, and there needs to be trust between teammates. When the strength of trust is palpable, you're no longer solely concerned with execution, and instead can be receptive to the connectivity of magic.